Hey, St. John, this is Pastor Adam, and before I get into today's interview, I want to give you a heads up that I sat down with Shelly Hasser. Shelly's been a member at St. John, I think, since the early 2000s, and she is currently on our executive council as one of our members at large, but she has also served on the Exploratory School Committee and the efforts there. And for those reasons, I thought it'd be good to bring Shelly on. And in addition, she also teaches out in the Marysville Public Schools. She's an art teacher there. She teaches high school students. And so we have a conversation about that and some of Shelly's upbringing because she grew up in a Lutheran school. I hope you find this conversation of interest and just a way to kind of give some further perspective as someone who went through Lutheran schools as a student and how that impacted her in her vocation in life today. All right. Thanks. Hey, St. John, this is Pastor Adam, and I'm sitting down for another one of these interviews as we continue to look ahead to this voters meeting on November 20th to consider the motion from the Executive Council about hiring a school planter / principal, with the aim towards an elementary school. And today I'm sitting down with one of our members, Shelly Hasser. Shelly, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Oh, glad to have you here. So why bring Shelly on? Shelly has been one of our members of the Exploratory School Committee, so she's been in our different meetings and efforts. Shelly's also on our executive council. You're one of the members at large, right?
Yes.
On the council. Yes. And Shelly, she is also an alum of one of our Lutheran schools growing up. So Shelly, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm originally from Minnesota, so that is the land of the Lutherans, as well as 10,000 Lakes. And so, yes, I attended Trinity Lutheran Church and School, or well, of course, the church and the school, growing up, kindergarten through 8th grade. Then I went to public school for high school, college at the University of Minnesota in Duluth. Of course, moved to Guam to get my first teaching job, and then I landed myself here in Ohio in around 98 and started coming here in 2001.
Oh, man. I mean, of course, we're going to talk about the Lutheran school stuff, but how do you balance going from Duluth to Guam in terms of weather? Like just nothing in the middle, right? Just extreme to extreme.
Well, I know it's kind of interesting. And believe it or not, it seemed like it was a Minnesota migration point because the girl who picked me up and was my sponsor was from Minnesota. The lieutenant governor was from Minnesota. And we actually had a Minnesota gathering every year on Guam where it would just be everybody who on the island was from Minnesota. And it was a huge event.
Okay. Did y'all have like Juicy Lucy's or something, or what'd you do?
You know Minnesota well. We had a fiesta. We did the local customs kind of things in just our Minnesota way. And
there you go.
And it was fun. But yeah, the weather was interesting.
And you also teach now. You're at Marysville schools, right?
Yes. I started at Edgewood Elementary and now I'm at the high school.
Okay. And you teach art.
I teach art.
All right. What are some of your favorite things about teaching art?
I love everything about it, I guess. I think it's nice because it allows me to get to know my students. And, it just is a lot more social than if I were teaching math. Because if I had known I was going to become a teacher, that's probably what I would have taught is math. But because I was resisting teaching until it just was like, okay, I guess this is what I must do. It just allows me to get to know my kids and then encourage their creativity. And it's really neat when I can turn a student who is resisting doing the work and they're like, I can't do this. I'm not good at it. And when I can show them ways that they can be creative and have, make good stuff, then that's super fun,
Yeah. And especially going from that kind of math brain. I wouldn't think math and art would mesh, but you get to kind of help bridge that, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes. And it's surprising how science and art go together way more often than even math and art. And it all depends. And I think that's why my graphic design degree probably fits the math, because I went into college as a computer science major and then had a professor who said, I don't understand why you're not in the art class for majors and you're in this non-majors one. I'm going to go, oh, I'm not getting an art major. I'm just getting my credit. And he's like, I want you to take this drawing class next semester and just see what you think. And so he got me into that drawing class. And he, not only that, when I registered for it, it was full. And then I happened to run into him in the hallway, and he took me to the professor and got me in that drawing class. And then, yeah, by the spring of my freshman year, I was like, all right, I guess I'll be a graphic designer. But then a painting professor was like, you're not in education? I know. Why would I want to be a teacher? And he's like, I watch you with all your peers. He's like, I feel like you'd be able to do that. And I was like, well, I'll look into it. And then I was like, it's not that many more classes. I'll do it. And then when I student taught, that's when I knew. I'm like, yep, this fits me very well.
Oh, wonderful. It's so good to have those mentors that are kind of seeing further than maybe we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you have been serving on this exploratory school committee, but why commit such a large amount of time? It's about a year and a half towards working in this committee.
Well, when I started coming here, initially I was curious why there wasn't a school, because it seemed like a large congregation, and coming from my upbringing, I always thought that the large Lutheran churches just automatically had schools that went along with them. And then, I do teach over in Marysville, and there were, 2 schools in that area that are attached to Lutheran churches. And then I thought, well, I don't know, maybe there's something I don't know. And so that was always a curiosity. And then when the idea came up, and I was just very curious about the process. How does one start a school, and just the information behind it? And so out of curiosity, and then just hoping that maybe I would have some kind of insight or some helpful suggestions, I got on there.
Oh, wonderful. And when did you come to St. John? I forget if you said that already.
Well, I started coming in 2001, I think.
2001.
Yeah, I moved to Dublin in that year, and then that's when I landed here, and I stayed.
So you grew up attending Lutheran school. You said kindergarten through 8th grade?
Yes.
Yeah, and could you just tell us a little bit more about that experience?
I don't think I grew up thinking anything different would have been better. In kindergarten, my teacher, Mrs. Tesh, was just so sweet and wonderful. And then it was a small school. So my 1st through 4th grades, we were all in one classroom with one teacher. But as the years went on, the school started growing, and we did get more teachers. And by the time I was in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade was by itself. Just the 2 classes, and then 5th and 6th was together, and there were 2 grades in a room instead of 4 at one time. But we had everything that we needed, and we got to play sports, and we would compete against the other Lutheran schools, and we had just even a family within just Lutheran schools in the area. That way we got to be friends with people, and it was just seamless moving to the public school in 9th grade. It just was great. And I really felt like having the school with the church made it just an automatic thing that I belonged in the church and with all the church members. And, because we would always have school programs, I felt like the whole congregation knew who we were and, loved coming to our programs and everything we always had to do. We would sing all the time at Lenten services. And
I was going to ask, were they like choir, like school choirs that would sing in services?
Yes.
So in addition to being connected to the church, just, through its worship services, but there was also was it weekly chapel, I'm guessing, or?
Yeah, we had weekly chapel. So every Friday we would go to the chapel. The pastor would, have our lessons. And by the time I was in 8th grade, then my friend Kim and I were even the organists for the chapel.
No way.
Yes. So anybody who could play piano, then we would have to, that's what we would do. But the best part, now that I'm thinking about it, I loved our religion packets. During the week time, of course, the teachers then would have religion, and it would be, you'd have math, you'd have English, you'd have social studies, and then we'd have religion. And whenever we got our new packets, I don't know, I think we all just loved those, because you open them up and you just never knew what came in them, prescribed crafts and just the stories and all the paperwork. I loved it. everything that we did focused on how it related to the Bible. So when we would learn science, we would learn it connected to the Bible, in just so many things where it just gave such a nice, strong base, so that when I did go to the public school and we were learning things, I had that good background with all of our lessons, and our education was good. By 8th grade, there were 8 of us in my class, but of us 8, I think 3 or 4 of us were in the top 10 of our graduating class, so we got a good education. We weren't slighted academically in the least. So, and that was one of the things that our school, we did pride ourselves on, is that our students, when we would leave Trinity, would go into the high school and we wouldn't be at the bottom of the barrel. We would have our act together.
Yeah, and just how you mentioned how everything is rooted in the Bible. I guess one way I was thinking of it is everything is rooted in the story of God, that we worship this God who created us and who created all these different fields of study. And you just have that foundation of everything flows forth from his story. As we interact with the creation, as we grow in our knowledge and skills, we hear how this God has rescued his creation in his son. And that's something being a fellow Lutheran school student, you don't get to trade. And it's so wonderful to have everything rooted in that narrative and flowing in and out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And we were children, so clearly we would have squabbles and fights. But when you would be talked to or disciplined, it was also in light of the story of Christ. And it's just like, well, how would we handle this? Those are things that I remember.
And if I remember right, you told me that I think the school eventually did close. Is that right?
It has, yes. It happened, I think, when I was on Guam. I believe it was not there. The church had a divide. They wanted just different things. Some people, and it wasn't concerning the school, it was just concerning the pastor. And sadly, then once the church divided and the congregation, got kind of cut in half or whatever, then it just slowly started to fall away. And I don't know any of the other details because my family, they left the church and they started a different church. But that pastor, they continued another school, and it was the few kids that left, they just had school in a trailer house. So they kind of continued that on.
It's always hard to hear of divisions in the church and just down to the local congregation.
Oh, it broke my heart. It really did devastate me because even when I drive by the building, when I go to my hometown and I look at it, it makes me sad that happened.
In the letter we sent to the congregation, we spoke a little of how the devil can cause division in small matters and in large matters. No matter how this decision goes with the congregation on the 20th of November, we need to be the congregation of St. John and to be the brothers and sisters that Christ has baptized us to be. It's always so sad and frustrating when that's not the case in the church, at large or in other congregations. And that's something not to take lightly. And I hope the members are hearing that, and it's not just one direction, all this, but rather, how do we do these things together as a congregation?
I think that you're 100% correct on that. And I think one of the things that I respect most about you is that you are always aware of that. And I think the executive council, having talked about this and being aware of looking, and being ready for when there are questions asked, and if there are differences of opinions, how we prayerfully maybe make these decisions, and then you can be in the front of it instead of it blindsiding you, and because it is a terrible thing. And I think this congregation is just too special right now that it would be so heartbreaking. So I think that's what we all need to keep in our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so whether with this decision or something else, and the devil is no slouch when it comes to trying to attack the church. And if it's not this, it can be something else. Let's do a little unexpected question. So Shelly, going through a school, you had memory work, I'm guessing.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, what were some of the things you had for memory work? I'm not going to make you restate it here.
I'm like, listen, we didn't talk about this. The entire catechism, for sure, during 8th grade, that's when, I went through catechism. I feel like by the time I went through kindergarten through 8th grade, I may have had the entire Bible memorized, but only in tiny little chunks. But yeah, that with our religion packets, that would be one of the things. Here's your memory work for the week.
Yeah, so there'd be certain Bible verses you had memorized. You mentioned the small catechism and the what does this mean, and we should fear and love God,
yes.
And away we go. And such a helpful thing to have. Even the books of the Bible memorized, I can use the scriptures more fluently, and there are just some of these habits that are formed that benefit the Christian throughout all of their life. Well, Shelly, I've appreciated our conversation and just a little bit of memory lane with our Lutheran school upbringing. Coming back to your work on the exploratory school committee and think about your role in the executive council and as a member of the congregation, but you're also a teacher in our community's public schools. With that vantage point of being one of our teachers in our public schools, why be a part of these efforts? Why encourage St. John in this direction?
Well, it certainly isn't because the schools are bad. The kids are getting good academic educations. They just are not getting a Christian education at school. One of the things that I just know, where I teach, I don't have a lot of Christian coworkers even, where they are outright Christian, and sometimes they will express their non-Christian beliefs very outwardly, to the students and with the students. And I just think, all right, if I had children, and if they had not gotten a really strong upbringing with their own faith, when you would have a teacher that you might emulate, you might question your own upbringing and your own beliefs if all you ever have is church on Sundays. And that's not to say that, families aren't doing a lot of praying and church related things and at home, but everybody gets busy. And if I think our younger children can, go to school every day, have Christian teachers, be able to talk about God freely and without anybody persecuting them or making fun of them in any way, I think then as they would go into their older grades, they would just have a stronger base and be able to just understand what they're seeing. And I just think it helps you exist in the world better if you just know where you're coming from. And I think that's the one thing that I think, from my vantage point with my students, is that there's been a turn where my students don't seem as free to even let people know they're Christian. It's almost cooler to not be Christian and to, kind of delve into the ways of the world, I guess, is just a way to put it. I don't know, but there's just so much out there. We have access to so much via technology and just what the kids are doing on social media, and they just don't know the story.
There's a lot you shared in your answer. And I guess a few things that stick out are how important it is in terms of raising children to form them in the faith. A Christian school, a Lutheran school, would further aid parents in forming their children into the story of Christ. I was even thinking, how many grades would we add here at St. John? We have a kindergarten, that's through our early childhood center. But if we take the jump into elementary school, let's say we go to We go to third grade, we go to fourth grade or fifth grade. I mean, with kindergarten plus, another 3, 4 grades, that's another 5, 6 years that we get to share Christ with these children and with their families. And that's some of the perspective I hope we see in this matter of we get to directly impact these families with Jesus in a more intentional way, and to give our children a better foundation, because we're always in the world. There's no complete sheltering from it, no matter how much people may try to. We're thoroughly in the world, and Christians are to be in and amongst it, and we will have our faith challenged. We will have our faith pushed against. And the more we can kind of build up that bulwark and that shield of faith and all these things, it matters. And I think that's some of what you're speaking in there. And I think also some of the thing you're bringing up is how there's just not this general assumption of Christian values and worldview are always just assumed anymore. We need to make sure we are reinstilling those things. A school like this can do that. And I guess that's also just another piece of why have a Lutheran school. It's not to say the public schools aren't doing fine education, or other private schools or homeschool families. Rather, what is the distinctive thing that would be about this elementary school at St. John is it's unabashedly focused and centered in Christ, and how each and every one of these children are being brought into the story of Jesus. And that's the distinctiveness that's there, not a critique and check on educational quality, but rather, as Christians, we're all about Jesus. That shouldn't be surprising if our schools are all about Jesus as well. Our stories shape us. And what is the narrative that drives who we are, how we live, how we go about things, even just how we use our devices, how we approach math, how we approach any arena of our lives? Your story shapes, it absolutely shapes that. And when your story is not the story of Christ, it's going to shape how you approach these things. One other thing I was thinking of as you were sharing about, why serve in this way on this committee, thinking as your place as a public school teacher, thinking of your, being an alum of a Lutheran school, being a member of this congregation, all these factors coming in is, we can't be completely sheltered, as you said. We are going to be in the world. And part of raising up children through a Lutheran school is we are preparing them to go out into the world and to be these positive impacts in the world, that we have these children who have been formed in the story of Christ. They now form and affect people in their lives. And so sending people into our world, we're raising good citizens and good stewards and children who are going to take up a variety of vocations. Right, you weren't looking to end up as a school teacher, as you shared at the beginning of our discussion, and yet here you are, and your upbringing has formed you for that task.
Yes, and I work with a lot of kids who, some of them never have had any education in Christianity, and I have had students who, they watch me. I mean, every teacher, every kid watches your teachers. We are kind of under the microscope, and they pay attention and they notice I'm nice to all my kids. I'm not just nice to some. And, there was a time when I had a student who came to my room, and it was back in the days of the goth, and he didn't even look clean, and he was wearing all black and collars that had spikes on them, and he came to my room and was having a hard time, and he needed a hug, and I gave him a hug. And there was a student in the room who went home and told their family they couldn't believe that I would hug such a boy, that they were just shocked. And I know the parents, and they're a good Christian family, and it gave them an opportunity to talk about how that's a good Christian thing. Think she was so kind to somebody who needed compassion. This boy, he had a troubled, life for sure, but we were able to have a lot of conversations, not even in school time, but sometimes we did. We talked about God, and it's okay. I'm in a public school, but it was fine in this situation. I was able to talk with him.
Yeah. And my guess is your pastor, your school teachers growing up, they're never going to hear those stories, right? And this is some of the larger kind of kingdom impact and world impact that we get to have in an endeavor like this, is we are preparing children to be these lights in the world, and to be just good workers and good stewards and good citizens and good employees and whatever else. But also they bear the light of Christ, and how that story shapes them. It has a ripple effect and an impact on those around them. And it's just, that's one of the toughest things to kind of quantify, right? And we won't fully realize until we're finally in the new creation at the resurrection to see, this impact of efforts like this. But it's all part of it. And to try to open our eyes to see further than just, so what does next year look like, or the year after, or what is the budget, and all those things need to be dealt with. And he's mentioned the councils thinking through those things and questions, and we hope to have okay enough answers for now.
Right.
But there's so much more going on.
Well, there always is. And it just seems the time is right. It just seems that it's good. Things seem to be falling in place as well. And I think that's one of the things that I think we'll find if we start the way things are going, and it's not biting off too much at any one given time, looking at all the aspects, hearing everybody's voices, and really, I think, considering a lot of information and input. I don't think it's a bad idea in the least. I just see all the benefits. I really think that it just will give our children these tools that I think are needed now more than ever. It's just everybody needs their best tools to do good work.
Well, Shelly, I don't think I need to ask this last question, but in your opinion and position, what would be your recommendation you'd have for St. John as they think through this motion and the upcoming voters meeting? I guess what would it be?
In my opinion, I definitely think we should move forward. I just know the benefit that it gave me in my life, and I think did form the person that I am. It's so easy to move halfway around the world, and I could have fallen away from the faith easy. There was a lot of stuff. I've traveled into many different countries of many different religions, and there's all these things where I could have easily fallen away just by somebody inviting me in, but my faith was so strongly rooted, and I just have to attribute part of that to having religion daily for 9 years of my schooling life, and of course a family as well that was Christian, but everything helps.
Well, Shelly, thanks for sitting down today and talking. I really appreciate our time, and I am sure you'd be glad to talk with any members that may have questions or want to follow up with you. And blessings in your continued work as you care for the students at Marysville, and not only the task of teaching them art, but also just preparing them for their vocations in the world as well.
Well, thank you for your time, and I absolutely will talk with anybody who wants to.
Well, thanks, Shelly. You have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.